Mom, are you discouraged? Are you like trying to get everything to work, but having trouble just doing too much and being tired and exhausted? Well, today I'm going to share with you some Proverbs 31 tips for inspiration for a discouraged mom. And I was that mom not too many years ago, and I learned everything through my fails. And I am going to share some tips with you today that I hope will encourage you. And what if you could find what you so desperately need from Proverbs 31 to carry out everyday life with your kids? Okay, so maybe you're caught in a never-ending cycle and of actions and reactions that won't let you go. Raising my kids was the hardest season I have ever faced in my entire life. Before I had kids, I had dreams and I had ideas, and they weren't exactly based on reality, but I was terrified of having them for fear that they would not want to follow Jesus. I didn't want them to get tired of hearing the story of Jesus and reject it. And life is short and it's like a vapor, and I wanted them to wholeheartedly follow Jesus. So I came to the conclusion that if I didn't read Bible stories to them or teach them in particular, that maybe they wouldn't reject it, because I grew up in a Christian home. And you know how you just kind of hear it in church and hear it at home so much that you kind of tune it out? I didn't want my children doing that. But, you know, I didn't want them to have that struggle. But so I decided that I would downplay teaching them about it. Well, life isn't picture perfect, and my life changed forever the moment my first baby was born. And I couldn't do that. I love Jesus. And so I had to tell them about Jesus. And so even though I had this cute baby and soon another toddler, and their sin nature was evident right from the start, when they cry and they don't know better than to cry like a spoiled child because they want to eat. And I'm talking about when they're nursing. And so, you can see their sin nature, but you're going to feed them, right? And you're going to get tired and exhausted and do things wrong. You think you're going to do it all right. You think you're going to do it better than your mom, but that isn't what happens. And so once you have one or two kids, your life is filled with chaos. And even though you try to be organized and get their food on the table, whenever things don't always work out real well all the time. And I'm not perfect. I make mistakes and I mess up. And what I found through mothering is that God's grace was bigger than my sins, and I saw my sin like never before. And motherhood, I kind of came to the conclusion that motherhood was for that, to teach me how to walk with God better. And so what I found is that life can be a cycle of actions and reactions between kids and you as their mom. And it can be so tough raising kids that you're in the cycle and you can't get off. So for me, it was a time that I saw my glaring sin and my need for Jesus like never before. And maybe you are perfect and maybe you can get it all together and do it all right, but I didn't. And because of that, I've come to the conclusion that I can share with you and hopefully help you avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into. These are ways that when you get yourself involved in these things, that it helps you to stop from being a discouraged mom. And doesn't mean you'll never be discouraged again, but what happens is that it will help you to stop that cycle and get out of it. Because through doing these things, you get your mind off of that and from focusing on the wrong things, and it helps you to start making steps in the right direction. So one of the best ways to stop being a discouraged mom is start putting some new habits into place. And when you are discouraged about how things are going with your kids, you become weak emotionally, and this possibly starts affecting you in other ways, maybe even in your health, because a lot of things start to cycle down. So a strong woman puts God's wisdom into practice and blesses those around her. That would include your husband and your children in the actions and attitudes. And those thoughts and attitudes have a profound effect on your daily actions towards those you love. That's why these 4 characteristics are so important. The first one is to become a trustworthy mom. And do you feel unqualified? I always do, and I still often feel unqualified for that season that it has me doing, or the thing that God has me doing. And the first way to debug your discouragement is to concentrate on being a wonderful wife to your husband. And miraculous things happen when you do this, because overnight or in time, you'll become a woman who'd give her, or like when you had your children, you became a woman who would do anything for your children. You give your life for your children. And I know for me, I wanted my kids to be safe and not get hurt. But beyond that, my desire for them was an eternal desire. I wanted them to be successful adults. But beyond that, and more important than that, in the short 18 to 20 years that I had with them, was to raise them to love the Lord. But beyond that, well, when you get past that period of life when they're between 18 and 20, those 20 years that you're raising them, is that you can get so caught up in raising them that you neglect your husband, and your relationship with your husband tanks. And it's often during this period or shortly after you raise them, when you find that there's nothing that you have in common with your husband, that your divorce can often happen. And instead of pushing through that period, doing things to culture your relationship with your husband, that you hear of people getting divorced during that time, and they give up on the relationship instead of putting some effort into it. And that's where being trustworthy during that period, especially when you're raising your children, counts. We can get into some bad habits, and we can start doing things that stop us from being trustworthy, because we do sneaky things. Believe it or not, that would stop that. We stop having the transparency in our marriage. And if you will keep that transparency in your marriage, in the long run, it will help your relationship grow with your husband. So being trustworthy is being an excellent wife. And character isn't something you're born with. It's something you have to work towards and learn to do. For a husband to have an excellent and trustworthy wife is far above rubies. That's Proverbs 31:10 through 11. Trustworthy wife. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. That's Proverbs 31:12. The biggest area for being trustworthy is being honest, not lying about what you did or where you've been. And finances are probably the biggest area of marriage struggle. So that's where we can so often compromise and lie to our husband, or just like not tell him things that we've done or think we can get away with, especially if you do the finances. And I want my husband to trust me completely in the grocery expenses and spending I do for our family. I've struggled too in learning to be fully trustworthy, and I'm not perfect, and I have my own share of fails in this area. So what challenges do you face in being trustworthy? So the second one is being a diligent mom. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. It's easy to get caught into thinking that you have to do all the things in order to be a Proverbs 31 woman. I got caught in this, and I was cooking and baking and cleaning and doing laundry and ironing and sewing and gardening and canning and knitting, or trying to knit and trying to crochet. I did crochet a few things, all the things for your kids and your family, and it can be so much that you really get stressed. And I want you to avoid that pitfall and to scale down and not think that you have to do all the things. And yet I don't want you to be lazy and to figure out what things you need to do for your family without trying to do all the things. Because these things in Proverbs 31, they're suggestions. You don't have to do all of them and do all those categories. And you might want to focus on a few and stick to them. So stop and reevaluate where you're at and scale down. The most important things would be to spend time with Jesus each day, to make your bed, because that makes everything look so much better, to eat breakfast with your kids when they're littles, and if you homeschool, and even if you don't, to spend time with them at breakfast. And don't leave them to fend for themselves. There's something to be said for the mom who cooks the breakfast or puts a cereal on the table and then sits down with them and maybe reads a few verses of the Bible to them while they're at the table. And then afterwards, quick clean and straighten your house after breakfast. And do this before they go to school or before you homeschool to keep your house relatively in order. It will not be perfectly in order during those years. And have a meal plan. I always did when my kids were growing up, because otherwise you just don't know what you're going to have for supper. And you can have panic and chaos at supper, which you can tend to have anyway. Read the Bible. Read a Bible storybook or the Bible to them each day. When your children are little, reading a Bible storybook may be where you're at right then. These are just suggestions that get you started in a routine for being a diligent mom. And what have you found in being a diligent mom works best for you? And then the third one is being a prudent mom. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. That's from Proverbs 31:14. This always made me think about food shopping. And it used to be that in order to buy beef or chicken that didn't have the hormones in them, I had to drive an hour. And of course, it was in opposite directions. Now we are blessed to find hormone-free meat right in Walmart or the grocery store. And even you can find gluten flours, gluten-free flours, non-gluten, whatever they call them now, and other health-related foods that are now easily available. So you can go right to Walmart, and it makes it so much easier. But keep in mind your family's health and make healthy choices as you get and be prudent in it, and don't overspend, and find healthy alternatives is always a good idea. And then number 4 is being a generous mom. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. And that's from Proverbs 31:15. I have always gotten up early, or tried to, and I find this verse encouraging because I'm doing one thing right anyway. Did you nurse your babies in the middle of the night? Did you have toddlers that woke up in the night and you got up? Maybe sometimes you need to sleep a little later and not feel guilty because of that. But I just want to encourage you that you are doing the right thing. Even if you're tired, and even if you have to sleep in a little late because of your schedule and you're being on duty in the middle of the night, your kids will be grown too fast. So in this season, I just want to encourage you. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out to the needy. That's from Proverbs 31:20. And your children may be the ones that are needy, and you may not be bringing meals to somebody or doing those things right now. So what spoke the most to you from this? Did it encourage you? And I'm just so glad that you were able to join me today in watching this. Thank you so much. Have a wonderfully blessed day.